Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Hello, everyone. You have found the podcast Wines We Drink. We are recording on location today. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and I'm here with my co-host Keith Herndon, a certified wine sommelier.
Charlotte, thank you. And yes, that crowd chatter you heard at the opening of the show is the sound of people enjoying wine and fellowship here at the Tapped Athens Wine Tasting Market. It's such a fun place, and we're delighted to be here for the 7th episode of Season 4.
Yeah, Tapped's proprietors Todd and Angela Hurt are always exceptional hosts, so we are excited to be here, not only for today's episode, but for the next two as well.
Yes, Todd was a guest on a couple of episodes last season, and we'll be featuring another great interview with Todd today as part of The Finish, which is our name for the ending segment of each episode.
And if you missed Todd's previous conversations with us, you can find them along with all of our other previous episodes on any of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We also have a complete guide to our seasons and episodes at wineswedrink.com.
Charlotte, in last week's episode, we celebrated the midpoint of the season with an excellent sparkling wine from France. Not a champagne, but an equally delicious Cremant from Burgundy. Our season's midpoint is typically when we turn our attention away from those wonderful whites, rosés and sparklers that we've enjoyed, and then now we begin featuring a lineup full of wonderful reds.
I mean, we've certainly had some great wines so far in season 4, but I'm ready for some reds. So what are we starting with?
Well, to get us started, I wanted to present a red wine that works in the summer, one that you serve chilled, one that is home at a barbecue, and we found the perfect one, or to be more specific, Todd at Tap found the perfect summer red. We featured this wine at a Tap tasting last summer, and it was a big hit for all sorts of reasons, and we're going to explore some of those reasons as we drink some of it today.
Okay, well, that sounds great.
For many decades, this varietal was misidentified in California. Wine growers and winemakers thought they had a Gamay varietal, and wines made from it were labeled as Gamay Noir or Napa Gamay. But suspicion about the grape started to creep in the 1980s, and by the end of the 90s, science had proven what the variety actually was, right? Those vines were a French varietal known as Valdiguié.
I didn't get to attend that tasting last summer, so I'm fairly certain I've never had a Valdiguié, but it's fun to say, and it's always a treat to try something new on this show, so I'm anxious to get started. What bottle of Valdiguié are you opening for us today?
Well, we're opening a 2022 bottle from J-Lore Vineyards and Wines. This winery grows these grapes near Monterey in an American viticulture area, or AVA, known as the Arroyo Seco, which translates to dry riverbed, right? This is a mostly arid climate. It does get some wine growing benefits from its proximity to the Pacific Ocean, but the area has nice loamy soils, and Valdiguié just seems to like it a lot here.
Huh, yeah. I mean, so a grape with French ancestry is finding a home in California. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But for the famous grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, everyone understands their history, I think. The fact that this grape was misidentified for so long, I think makes it a good story. The grape is originally from the south of France, and there's still some very limited production in the Languedoc and the Provence areas of France, but Valdiguié has largely disappeared from France. And most of its production is now in California. And even so, it's a small amount of acreage when compared to those more well-known varietals.
Wow, I mean, it's practically endangered. So let's enjoy a glass of this wine that now calls California its home.
Well, of course, let's start today's tasting. This bottle has a screw cap, which is becoming an increasingly popular way of enclosing wine bottles these days. And I think that makes it an even more at-home barbecue wine, right? It's easy to open. So let me open this bottle and pour us a couple of glasses here.
Wow, lovely. As you're pouring, I kind of want our audience to know that they really need to check out the bottle's label. We have an image of the bottle on our Instagram, so go and take a look. Not that we should always be judging a book by its cover, but in this case, it's a lovely painted label with wildflowers and butterflies. It just screams summer.
Yeah, it's the back label has some text that reads, quote, "An enticing little-known French grape has found its perfect New World home among Monterey's coastal lupines and poppies," end quote. I believe those are the flowers depicted on the painted label.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and it is a beautiful bottle. It's a beautiful looking wine in the glass. It's fitting all the vibes.
Yeah, you can't help but notice this wine's bright purple. You know, I'm calling this a majestic magenta.
Ooh, a lovely alliteration. And it's definitely, like you said, it's colorful. So is it time for a sniff?
Absolutely, go in there. You know, so as you put your nose in the glass, you know, tell me what first comes to mind. What aromas are you getting out of that?
Wow. I mean, this is a red fruit wine for sure, all day. I mean, I'm picking up immediately notes of just bright cherry, bright raspberry, and then there's some sort of fresh floral qualities, I would say too, and maybe that's again signaled on the label that we were talking about. But it's a very bright, refreshing smell.
Yeah, it's those red fruit and floral notes are there, you know. But I'm picking up some pepper notes as well, right? You know. So let's start taking a few sips of this to unpack this wine. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love that it's chilled. And that was just so refreshing and so unique for what I'm used to trying in terms of reds.
Yeah, it is July.
Yeah, it's hot. I'm actively sweating as we speak, so this is so refreshing.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot going on here. I'm going to take one more sip. And I think that it is encouraging, you know, serving it chilled is really the way to go, because those fruit flavors just really seem to pop.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. I mean, chilling a light-bodied red wine like this is a great way to enhance those fruit flavors. And I think this is one that also draws a bit of tartness out, you know, like cranberries.
Yeah. And like a chilled white wine, this wine is coming with some nice acidity that's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, this wine has an excellent finish. Those pepper aromas that I just mentioned turn into a subtle spiciness on the palate, and there's a jammy quality of black plum. You know, I think it's easy to understand why this was mistaken as a Gamay for so long. You know, but when you join those fruit flavors together with that acidity you mentioned, you get a wine that has this mouth-watering finish. You know, it's a California wine, clearly, but it presents in the style of a French Beaujolais.
Well, there's that French heritage coming through again.
Yes, the varietal's heritage is certainly a big part of the wine story and what we're telling. But for, you know, a fuller picture, we need to explain a bit about its production, right? This is a red wine that spent its life before the bottle all in stainless steel, no oak. It was produced using organic and biodynamic methods and has earned the Certified California Sustainable Seal. So it's a clean wine, and it comes in at only 12.5% alcohol by volume. So that's another trait that makes it a great wine for patio pool parties and those barbecues that I keep mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lovely sipper, and wine that's certified sustainable, relatively low alcohol, great color, great flavor, beautiful bottle. We've checked all the boxes, really, except for one, which is price, of course. So how much should our audience expect to pay for a bottle?
Well, another box checked.
Okay.
Right? This wine is among the best price to quality ratio wines that we've ever featured.
What?
Okay. This wine sells for $13.
Oh my gosh.
You know, can you believe an under $15 wine that has 3 professional scores of 90 or above?
Wow.
Okay. The tasting panel gave it 90 points. Wine and Spirits gave it 91 points, and Decanter Magazine came at 92 points.
This is one of those wines that you can really offer at a party and spend all night bragging about how smart you are for finding it.
Or at least you can brag about listening to a wonderful wine podcast that features great
There
affordable
you
wines.
go.
You know, how's that for a shameless plug?
I love
right?
how you tied that in very naturally.
Right. So seriously, though, I think it's an example of what happens when a family-owned winery with rich history commits to making a great consumer product. It doesn't all have to be about $200 Cabernet Sauvignon, and I think J. Lohr is a winery that gets that and is comfortable having a wide-ranging portfolio of wines.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fascinated in the uniqueness of this wine, and so these choices made by the winery are very interesting to me. So could you tell us more about the winery?
Yeah, sure. Jerry Lohr, who's now in his early 80s, is a certifiable California wine legend, okay? His creation is now in great hands with his children, Steve, Cynthia, and Lawrence, who are now running the business. And it's also massively expanded over the years. It's now an extensive operation. They have 1,400 acres in Monterey County, another 2,700 acres in Paso Robles, and a small but significant 30-plus acres in Napa. So with such an enterprise, I'm just thankful that they're still keeping up with Valdiguié. Jerry started bottling this varietal all the way back in the 1970s, so I hope they keep it going.
Wow, I mean, that's another great backstory that really helps us appreciate the wine that we're drinking here today. But to appreciate it even more, you know where I'm going with this. We have to talk about pairing the wine with food.
Well, this is a wine that's incredibly versatile, when it's time to pair it with a food. The official tasting notes say that it can pair with just about anything.
Well, okay then.
For me, as we've already established, this is a barbecue wine. I think it's perfect complement to barbecue chicken, right? And it'll even work with some of these sauces that may have some a little bit of sugar in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, like my favorite barbecue sauce. I mean, that sounds delicious, and I'm already drooling. So, but when we think about cheese and offering this maybe with a cheese plate, what would you recommend?
Well, let's see what you think of my suggestion here. I like to pair this wine with Gouda cheese. I've got some there on a plate for you, so please have a bite of some Gouda cheese and take a sip of this Valdiguié.
Don't mind if I do. Oh, I really like this suggestion. I mean, the cheese is working with the acidic finish of this wine. It's really bringing out that brightness because the brightness is cutting through the fatty, nutty Gouda. This is a great choice.
Yeah, thanks. There's one more way to serve this wine that I like to share that has nothing to do with cheese.
Okay, lay it on me.
Okay. Brendan Wood, who's the winemaker for this wine and other J. Lohr Reds, has some suggestions on the website, and he suggests adding a touch of soda water and a slice of orange for a, quote, perfect end of the day sipper, end quote.
Oh, wow.
So I think we have to give that a shot, right?
Okay.
As we pause for our coming up break, there's some soda water I'm going to pour in the glass, right? And I'm going to grab some orange slices from the fridge, and we'll make our own little spritzers here.
Wow, that's an added bonus treat. So while we're going to make our little wine spritzer, we'll take a short break. We'll be back in a moment for a segment of the show that we call The Finish, and we're going to be joined by our host, our home away from home, Todd Hurd, the proprietor at Tapped. Hello again, everyone. We are back from our break, and we are now in the portion of the show that we call The Finish. And once again, we are joined by Todd Hurd, the proprietor of Tapped. Thanks so much for hosting us at Tapped for the 7th episode of Season 4. We were saying this is our 4th iteration here, and that is so exciting.
Wow, Season 4, how exciting. And we have not run out of good wine to talk about yet.
Well, Charlotte and I are enjoying a nice spritzer made from the Valdiguié that you introduced us to last summer. So I'm going to ask you to please join us in some of this spritzer.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Thank you, guys. I've never had it this way, and it's also known as a Napa Gamay.
Yeah, we talked about some of that on the actual show today.
Okay.
And so yeah.
Did we also talk about how it almost disappeared?
How
the grape?
Oh, the grape itself. Yes. I mean,
France was pulling it out of the fields, and
Yes.
there were less than 30 acres left in the U.S. It's kind of
Wow.
crazy.
So it is a very rare grape. And the fact that J. Lohr has kept it going is really important, I think, for this varietal.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was quite that rare, so it feels extra special to be sipping on this.
Right. So Todd, you often introduce your customers to wines that many would say are off the radar, right? So what goes into the selection process for the wines you feature here at Tapped?
Keith, we're so lucky. We work with about 16 different distributors, and they come, at least 2 or 3 people come once a week, and we see over the average of a week about 15 new wines, and Angela and I both taste them. She tastes the whites and the rosés, and I taste the reds because she's much better at the whites.
That's great. So sometimes do you find things yourself that you ask the distributors to bring in because you've read about it or you've tasted it somewhere else?
I certainly have, Keith, and you know you've asked for things too that we brought in. So yeah, it's fun to read the literature and try to get some. We'll ask specifically for like can we have a 98-point wine come in from Napa Valley? Yeah.
So we were talking recently about an article from Jancis Robinson. You know, she's the famous wine critic and writer. You know, she wrote that we're seeing the quality of wine improve significantly every year, and she wrote that there is far more good wine than bad wine available. Do you think that reflects your experience running a business like this?
I definitely do, and I think that it's the consumers are the ones driving the bus. They're willing to spend a little bit more money for a higher quality wine instead of a mass-produced wine, and so I think that's driving the market. Yeah.
So Tapped is in its 3rd year now, which congrats for that, by the way. What would you say are a couple of lessons that you've learned about wine from owning and running a wine bar instead of just consuming it?
Charlotte, I have to say it's all about the people.
Really?
The people in the wine, people love to try new wine and to share it with other people. It's also about places. Whenever they drink a wine, they're transported to a different part of the world. And I had a couple in here last night that was headed to New Zealand, and they were so excited and wanted to try some New Zealand wines before they got there.
Wow, yeah. I mean, one thing too that I love about being here in Tapped is not only you have the wines on tap, but then behind that you have all of these maps of all of these different wine regions, and that helps me place everything. So the education piece is a big component, it seems.
And we're truly getting wines from all over the world. It's amazing.
We've talked in the past about wine trends. So now that you're in year 3, is there a big trend that's affecting the wines that you're carrying?
I think some of the trends that we're seeing are more to a natural style wine, less intervention, less sulfur being added. Also, we're seeing some changes in the product in the sense that they're trying to use more recycled glass, and that can be an issue for us when we're trying to sell a rosé and they've put it in an amber color bottle. But the reason is you can't use more recycled glass in a clear bottle. It's only pure glass. So that's why they're doing that in those particular rosé bottles. But we're also seeing the disappearance of the foils on the end of the bottle, and they're just trying to save materials so that we're not being as wasteful in the wine industry.
Right. We keep reading about the decline in wine sales, right? And we're hearing that the younger generation, Gen Z, those early 20-somethings, are not drinking as much wine. So do you see that, and where do you see the patterns with wine consumption heading in the next few years?
So I do not see that from where I sit because we're at a college campus. We get to see college seniors come out. They'll bring their parents in with them. They get to share wine and talk stories with their parents. So I see things, I definitely see the younger market are gravitating towards things that their parents didn't, like a pet nat, for example. That can be a little trendy, and orange wines also, right? So most of the parents are more Napa Valley, Cab Sauv, right? So I'm seeing some changes and trends.
Okay.
Go with what you know, I guess. But also, this is the space to try new things. So, Todd, thank you again for joining us on today's episode, and thank you for hosting us. We'll be back.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Well, that's the finish for today's episode. Keith, where's our wine journey taking us next week?
We'll be drinking and talking about another wine that we featured at a tap tasting event earlier this year. It's a red varietal from what may be the birthplace of wine, right? And it has a special characteristic that few red grapes share.
We're all about the special characteristics of wine here, so more wine stories to unravel next week. Thanks so much, everyone.
We'll never run out of wine stories. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.